Hello everyone and welcome to the second game of the finals of the Freestyle Chess Go-To Challenge 2024. It is Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana, and in the first game where Fabi had the white pieces, we mentioned that one moment where Magnus could have played the rook captures on e6 instead of bishop captures on e6, and it would have given him a position where he could play for advantage, but he did not find it. He didn't even, his spidey sense wasn't tingling in that critical position, and the game very quickly ended in a draw. But now it is Fabi who has the black pieces, and he will have to withstand what Magnus has to throw at him. And the position gets incredibly interesting already already as of move 2, as it would seem. Let's see what happened here, and will it go, the distance like it did between Fabi and Daronian? They played all the way to Armageddon through all the tie breaks, or will the contest end in classical? So Magnus, with the white pieces, opens with pawn to g4. Now, what I found very interesting about this position, and also what told me that I knew absolutely nothing about chess, is that when I looked at the position first, look at the queen, look at the bishop, look at the other bishop, all facing queen side, and the two knights are ready to jump here. So you kind of don't imagine black castling queen side, and also, goes the same for white. You don't imagine white castling queen side because everything is kind of pointing to the queen side. But as you'll see very quickly on in the game, both of them have castled queen side. So here, pawn to g4. Sorry about that. By Magnus, we have pawn to c6. Now, countering that white queen, we have castles immediately. Now, you don't have to move your king and rook anywhere. They just switch spots because this is the ending position of a regular castle in regular chess. That's how castling in chess 960 works. And now pawn to g5. Also opening up the queen, we have pawn to h4 and now pawn to h6 by Fabi. Now, very interestingly, this is a weak move by Fabi, and if opening theory existed in chess 960, this would have not a question mark, but it would have a sort of a blunder sign, because what you have to play here is pawn to h5, and this was made available. Magnus's old coach Peter Heine Nielsen posted it on Twitter, that it's an evaluation from Sese, saying that h5 is incredibly strong because of the following line, and it's not something that you will find over the board. H captures on g5, rook captures on g5, and now pawn to f4, attacking the rook. And it seems that black is just playing silly moves, because now you move the rook, white plays g5, and white grabs more space and retains a much better position. But there's the in-between bishop to g7. The problem is that if you capture on g4, then rook captures, h captures, and you lose the queen. But with the inclusion of bishop to g7, black is threatening mate in 1. And now white has to deal with his knight to c3, and all of a sudden the black queen is defended, and now you just capture on g4, and you are very happy with your position. So that's why Fabi's h6 was imprecise. h5 was the move you had to play here. But yeah, I mean, we have to get used to this if chess 960 will be the norm. Even a 2800 player like Fabi can make a mistake on move 3. So okay, pawn to h6 was played. It's not that maybe the position is not still lost, but will be much harder to play, especially after a miss like this. Pawn to d4 by Magnus, pawn to d5, and now e4. We have castles queenside also, and now knight to b3, just nicely developing. Knight to c7, and now knight to c3. We have pawn to e6 and bishop to d2. Again, just putting pressure on that g5 pawn, and you have to do something about that. So bishop to e7 and pawn to f4, nicely expanding on the king side, while your king is safely tucked away on the queen side. Knight to d7, and now you could maybe play a useful move before deciding on any captures, but Magnus does capture on d5, c captures, and now f captures on g5, h captures, and pawn to h5. And already you can see that not playing pawn to h5 costs Fabi a lot. There's already a passed pawn on h5, and Fabi will have to deal with it for the rest of the game. But okay, we often say that one weakness is not enough to win the game. You often need two. So Magnus needs to create another one. Knight to b6, the knight, Fabio is planning to bring a knight on c4 perhaps, and now bishop to d3, nicely developing, and we have queen to h6, blocking the passed pawn, and now Fabio needs to figure out a way how to get f5 in without keeping e6 as a permanent weakness. If he can get something like bishop to d7, f5, and get some sort of a trade here, or maybe even create a passed pawn of his own, it's gonna be great for him. But Magnus, of course, will do everything he can to stop that. So rook g to f1, aimed at that f5 square. We have rook to f8, also defending the f7 pawn, so you can develop the bishop, and queen to g1. Nicely developing, we have bishop to c6, and now bishop to e1. This bishop is very nicely developed now. Once this bishop comes to g3, it's also going to be very nicely developed. And Fabi does counter that with bishop to d6. But if you look at Fabi's pieces, the bishop on d6 is pretty much the only active piece. Okay, this knight might have something going on by coming to c4, but for the moment the bishop on d6 is the only active piece. And of course Magnus goes after the only active piece, bishop to g3. Bishop captures on g3, queen captures, and now knight to c4. And you might think, okay, of course we're not gonna capture this knight here. It would be a silly thing to do. We would free up the silly looking light square bishop, and the knight isn't really hurting us. But if you ask our good friend the engine, it is the absolute best move, because even though you free up this bishop, look at this, bishop captures, d captures, knight to d2. You attack the c4 pawn. The only way to defend it, if you're not ready to play something like b5, which would be terrible, is to play bishop to d5. Now you trade the knight, and after e captures, you play rook to f5. And black really has nothing here. There's no way to improve. G5 is a permanent weakness. You can double up or even triple up on the f file, go after that f pawn. This is a weakness. The knight can come to b1 and c3. The d5 pawn becomes a weakness. The black king is weak, so this is objectively a lost position for black. Doesn't look like a move you should play, and everything you know about chess is telling you not to play it. And Magnus doesn't play it. He plays rook d to e1, which is also a fine move. He has a different way of approaching this. Knight to d6. Now Fabi gets it away from any harm. He will not allow bishop captures on c4, and now knight to c5. We have pawn to f5, finally getting this done, and now queen to e5. And this is now a pretty big problem, because how do you react here? The problem is, if let's say f captures on g4, which is what you want to do. Okay, f4 can be played, but then white will continue with what white did in the game anyway. But let's say you capture here. You want to weaken the h5 pawn. The idea is rook captures on f8. And now either you remove the queen from the defense of the e6 pawn and you just capture on e6, or you capture with the rook and then you blunder the knight on d6. So this would be a winning position for white. So instead, after queen e5, knight to e4 was played by Fabi. And now Magnus just goes pawn to a4. He wants to play a5, a6, bust open the queen side, and, do some damage against that black king. He already has one thing going for him here. He will create another one. There is also a weakness on e6. Everything is going his way to winning this game. And now the only way to defend this is to play some miraculous moves, and I will just show you a fine line. Knight captures on c5, d captures, and now d4. Attack the knight, and once the knight moves, you take it, and once a captures on b5, you charge at the queen, rook to d5, and once the queen moves, you will take the c5 pawn, and now after, let's say, rook to e5, you will trade again, captures, f captures on g4, now we get everything traded, captures, and white is still better. But maybe, black can hold on. However, Fabi did not go for knight captures on c5. Fabi played knight captures on c3, and now his position is lost. Magnus played b captures on c3. He played f captures on g4. Rook captures on f8. Queen captures, and now there are many ways to win the game. You could capture the pawn on g5, just go after the g4 pawn. You could just improve the position with king to b2. You could play rook to f1, go after the black queen. Interestingly, everything is winning here, but Magnus goes for the nicest move, and that is queen captures on c7 with check. A temporary queen sacrifice, but still, It is a queen sacrifice, king captures, and now knight captures on e6 with a monster royal fork here. King to d6, knight captures on f8, we have rook captures on f8. And okay, you might think, why rush this? Why go into this endgame? You're not even up material, but Magnus is convinced that he will win this, as he does have the passed h-pawn. And this is haunting Fabi from the beginning of the game, from move 3, where he played pawn to h6 instead of pawn to h5, and this allowed Magnus to create all of this sort of counterplay against the faulty move, this is the reason of Fabi's downfall, the passed h pawn. So okay, bishop captures on a4. Magnus is even down in material, but now rook to e5. Of course, he will recollect some material back. We have pawn to a6 now, trying to trade off the light square bishop. So the bishop not defending the h7 pawn, but now rook captures on g5. We have bishop to b5 offering a trade, rook g6 check. We have king to d7, and now bishop captures on b5, a captures, and of course rook captures on g4. And now at the end of the day, Magnus is just up a pawn, so there's no need to complicate. Like good old Capablanca, he takes the simplest way towards victory, as that's what you do if you really understand how chess works. So okay, Fabio of course will still fight. Rook to f1 with check, king to d2. Sorry, that's not a d2. King to d2. We have rook to f2 with check, and now king to d1. Rook to h2, putting the rook behind the passed pawn. Now rook g7 with check, king to c6, defending the pawn, and of course pawn to h7. We have pawn to b6. And now king to e1. We have pawn to b4. Fabi trying to get his king maybe to attack those pawns, maybe even to threaten some checkmating ideas. If he can get the opposition against Magnus's king, maybe it will be enough to at least get some sort of a drawing mechanism going on. So c captures king to b5, pawn to c3, defending on b4, king to c4, and now rook to c7 check. It's the only move that wins, but not really a difficult one to find, as, I mean, you don't want to give up the c pawn for nothing. Rook to c7 check, king to d3, and now king to f1. King to e3, but king to g1, kicking away the rook without allowing the black king to establish opposition. Rook to h6, and now king to g2, making the way with the king up the board, and it was in this position on move 44 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So really a nice win by Magnus, and yeah, already we could say, for someone of Fabi's caliber, a 2800 classical player, his third move, pawn to h6, could definitely be considered a blunder. But yeah, I mean, who would expect that? If you know you can advance it all the way to h5, then you will. But yeah, that bishop to g7, quite the beauty. I'm sure you'll agree. And yeah, for those of you who are wondering how this would could be played out, it's not clear how you actually promote that pawn. Well, you either go to d3 and you allow the white king up the board, or you continue blocking the white king. But it's not permanent. Like b5 will be played, and now after, let's say, king to g4, blocking the white king, rook to g7 with check. King to f5, you will now get the g3 square for your king, and after rook to h1, trying to win the white rook. But even if you win it, then the pawn still promotes. I mean, nothing spectacular happening here. Let's say rook to b7, you go after the pawn here. King to g5, you're still maybe willing to trade pawns here, but just king to f3. And after king to f5, you will play king to e3. And after rook to h3, you will hide the king all the way to the queen side, and that's where you make progress. Rook h2 check, let's say king d3, rook h3 check, king c2. Now, okay, you will go up the board regardless of black checking you or not. So rook to h6, you defend the pawn. And now king to b3. King to e4, you will play king to b4. And now after king to d3, now is the time to strike. You either advance the pawn and promote to a queen, or you play rook captures on b6. Black cannot capture because you get a queen into the game, so you capture on h7, and now you're just going to play rook to d6, and this is how you win the game. Now you go after this pawn, you will play king to c5, you will start pushing the b pawn, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, sometimes that's the weird part of chess. You've been, taking care of this pawn from the beginning of the game, and you really want this to be the object of your victory, but sometimes you have to part with it and just make the b pawn the winning pawn, as it often is in chess. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a pretty wild ride for Magnus, but he did, yeah, even though he didn't do so great in the preliminaries, when it came to the actual matches, he just showed that there's no stopping him. Even losing the first game of the quarterfinals, he came back, defeated Alireza, and then it was just smooth sailing onwards. Defeating Noderbeck, defeating Fabiano Caruana, not even taking anything to tiebreak. So yeah, great stuff by Magnus. The GOAT, as the name of the tournament suggests. So yeah, once again, really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Robert Arathun, Alexandru Gita, David Gaspari, and Kevin Hawkins, and B4 Forever for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.